everybody, welcome to G4G here on YouTube. The first thing you might be struck by in this particular video is the sad electronica music playing in the background. Well, that's because it's time to pour one out for our homie, GLB, who is basically like the tooth fairy to this community at this point in time. Maybe once every few months you lose a tooth and a pack of Trident and some money appears under your pillow, but you're never really sure if the person exists or not. Well, we're apparently all 9 years old and we just got told by our parents that GLB, or the tooth fairy, doesn't exist. In this case, GLB has backed out of the project. So I'll get to that in a moment, because the bad news is going to be the bulk of this one, unlike the last video where it was the good news. The good news is, he's not on the list right now, but Kingfisher apparently showed up in the Discord just the other day. However, he never answered any questions. As you can see here from Maximus, he said, at Kingfisher745, are you just the real king of the poser? So he never did respond over here. You can see there was no text came in from that Kingfisher, despite generating a lot of hype. But anybody who's played competitive games for a while, like competitive shooters, like for me the Unreal Tournament series, the girlfriend with TF2, both of us with Overwatch, there's always, you know, the sincerest form of flattery goes into effect over here. Somebody takes the name of somebody famous and really has nothing to do with it. So in my day of the Unreal Tournament and Quake series, it was always Fatality. Everybody ran around with a name that looked like Fatality, and now you have people, you know, raking in the money playing for the Overwatch League, and like Sinatra was one of these. He's an 18-year-old kid who's in a professional Overwatch League, and there's people running around with like something Sinatra, and everybody thinks like, oh hey, it's the real Sinatra. No, it's not. We don't know if the real Kingfisher showed up in this Discord or not, but there was certainly somebody with at least that name. He never responded. Could it be Kingfisher? Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was streaming Marvel Avengers Alliance stuff for months before Kingfisher got on the ball over there, and everybody was like, is this the real Kingfisher? And obviously it was. So it's certainly possible it was, in fact, KF745, just maybe being a little late to the party. But the one thing we really need to talk about on this one, and this is the bulk of this particular video, is the bad news. As we see here from Just Busy, GLB said it's all going very bad and he can't finish the project. And he goes on to say his problems probably got worse. Mostly people were oddly not freaking out. There was not screaming in the streets. There was not torches and pitchforks, and nobody was trying to break into Frankenstein's castle over here. Everybody just largely kind of accepted this. It was either a non-committal response or people going, ha, I fucking knew it. And we can certainly get to the ha, I fucking knew it crowd in a bit. But as you can see here, nobody was like, oh god. There was not weeping and gnashing of teeth and everything over here. And a lot of people did say, well, can you say if he said anything about it? Like, what's going on? And Just Busy said, I don't think he's in a position to worry about that. I didn't even think he had time to answer. Now, I've been honest with you guys in other videos. I've always said that my hope in this project was tempered by reality and just kind of cynicism that this would actually happen. I mean, remember, I'm one of the people who is aware of a bunch of the things that have gone on with MAA since it died, including the now infamous, give me $1,000, I'll give it to a Russian dev and he'll design the game and everything like that. Like, we're pretty sure at this point the only thing the Russians do in the United States is fuck with our elections and apparently do blood doping so they can win the Olympics. But, you know, outside of that, for the most part here, I mean, any of these other attempts in the past have looked bad. So when GLB came around, he was a little fresh-faced, and we kind of believed him, and he had some screenshots that a lot of people would point out, hey, fucking Photoshop people, do we not remember this thing exists? But, there were definitely people that were concerned, and I kind of was in the middle of the speed bump, and depending upon how things were in GLB's life, I would fall on one side or the other. And I mean, not disparaging his life situation, if things have gotten bad, like, he now has 52 sisters, and 36 of them are pregnant, and his, you know, his beloved donkey can no longer pull the cart up the hill at the end of the day. You know, I don't mean to disparage his life situation over here. It certainly could have been worse. But we all kind of predicted this would eventually happen. And there's a lot of people that are probably going to comment below and go, see, it's the long con that I was telling you about. It's the long con that I knew this guy was going to be pulling. I don't know. I don't really know if I agree or disagree with that. It just seems like I have mixed emotions on it. It seems like a very, very, very long and elongated prank to pull on a community of people. But by the same token, what effort has he really put forth into the prank? He shows up once every quarter to third of a year, says something about it, good or bad, and then disappears. That's honestly not a lot of caloric effort. I mean, you could burn that off in a Tic Tac. But I don't know. That's the current status over here. And some people like MAA Player, you know, they're coming out of the woodwork saying, you know, I knew it wouldn't appear, and we shouldn't wait for GLB. The good thing is, his advice, we shouldn't wait for GLB, is actually right. And it's what's been going on with Goofytroll. The fact that, you know, Goofytroll has been doing work and everything on this, because smart people weren't going to wait for GLB. Now, the wall that we all had to get over here is who actually had the source code. If we go back about 9 months ago, there was a lot of people saying, oh, I found the zip file, I found it. And people who knew what they were doing looked at the zip file, and it looked good. It was big, and everybody's like, I think this could be it. But do we not remember what it was like back in, like, the Kazaa and Napster and LimeWire errors and FTPs, when you would get something that looked like it was the right size to be what you wanted, like a game or an MP3, and then it wound up just being bullshit? That's what happened. People dug into that zip file that was being bandied about, and they discovered it was just the assets. It was the sprites, it was the graphics, it was the animations for the game taking up a lot of space. It wasn't actually the code. So it's kind of a bad analogy, but think of having a puzzle but no way to piece it together. That's what people were discovering was in the huge zip file. So of course that was a big letdown. It was like trying to find out if Bigfoot was real or not and finding a track only to discover, no, the track belonged to an elk or something. So fortunately, Goofytroll is the savior of this. He's decided he has the real code. He's decided to do legitimate work on it. He's posted active videos on it. And that's the one thing that the community really said, when I see a video of the game in action prior to having it in my hand as an alpha or beta, that's the only thing that I'm going to believe. That's the proof that I want. And fortunately, Goofytroll knows this and understands it, and he's been putting out action videos of it. One of the guys in one of his videos, my guess is it's Brazilian, because of course it is, just said bullshit to him. And I think that's utterly ridiculous that that was called out for being bullshit, because why would you put up animation from the games that lacked visual effects, lacked stamina usage, lacked damage numbers on the screen, lacked hit points going down? I mean, you know, don't misunderstand, I'm not disparaging GLB's work. He was showing a work in progress. For somebody to call bullshit, you would want to call that on what looks like a very detailed Photoshop image, or a clip of a video Kingfisher and I did, or something like that. I mean, clearly it was not a complete animation that you're watching, not a complete combat fight. And I just think, like, who puts out a steaming turd and says this is it, this is the proof? So I kind of thought the bullshit comment was way off base. I was actually very upset that somebody attacked Goofytroll with that. But, you know, it's to be expected. If you knew anything about what you're watching, you were clearly watching Adobe Flash Player playing a local SFW, excuse me, which is you know, a Flash file. It's like, you know, the way the PDF is an Adobe Acrobat document and you can have a file of it, you can also have files of actual video encoded in Flash. So Red Fred has got some wise comments over here. He's like, I don't think contacting GLB for his progress is a good idea. We're not even sure if he actually made any progress or not, or if he even has the complete source code. I've contacted him before. He usually never shares his stuff. He has actually refused to share the code that he has. Not that he refused to share his reworked version, he refused to share the source material. As devs know, there's what's called open source, which cannot in any way, shape, or form be restricted. Open source is available for people to use. That's where you have things like Linux builds. They're open source. You're allowed to get them, whereas Windows is not open source. You have to pay for it. You can't modify it. You're not going to throw a fork of Windows up on GitHub and make a variant of it, like, this version of Windows doesn't have a start menu. There's my fork on GitHub. This source code is not open source, so technically what GLB did is within his rights. He can say no to it. You don't say no when you have open source. It actually goes against the very theory of having open source stuff. So, you know, some people are like, okay, you know, who is GLB? They didn't really know, and we caught those people up and like, well, GLB is the one who originally said they were working on the game. Red Fred's got some stills over here of what Goofytroll's working on, including some stuff that I haven't seen before. He links the videos that I showed in my last video. We have a checklist. And, you know, a lot of people, including myself, have said, man, it would be really great if we can get what GLB has worked on so far, and maybe it can be forked into what Goofytroll's working on. My thoughts was like, maybe they've worked on different areas of it and could be meshed into a more complete product. However, if Goofytroll and GLB are working in the different languages that have gone into making this game, then technically, yeah, it's not the most compatible. I was hoping you could do copy pasta. That Goofy would have worked on Section A of the game, whereas GLB worked on Section B, and Goofy could be like, oh, I haven't gotten to Section B yet. Let me just absorb your changes, and that's one less thing that I have to do. Goofytroll, being a coder, obviously knew that this was not really going to be the situation. That is probably something that my girlfriend would definitely understand better, having done way more of this than me. I generally don't get into the coding side of it. The last coding I ever did was probably HTML and Java a decade ago. So I'm going to go ahead. This now is more stuff about the story. So I'll bring up this little list over here that has been compiled. Goofytroll's version of the game doesn't have a release date yet, so for people who were waiting for May 4th, you're not going to get it. It's because GLB, when he started, Goofytroll, when he started, anywhere that he started would have been behind what GLB had done. I mean, Goofy is definitely a half a year or more behind what GLB would have been claiming. If you look at the Reddit, GLB has not been active in 4 months. He's not posted anything in 4 months. So this conversation that supposedly GLB had, we are taking we're taking the word of it here from the guy who posted it. Get the name back, Just Vizzy. So we're assuming that Just Vizzy is telling us the truth. Hell, maybe it's GLB in disguise, just wanting to not be shot as a messenger, so he's pretending to be somebody else. You know, honestly, we don't know. It's dramatic, it's soap opera stuff, but what matters is that Goofytroll is working on this, and here is some hope to do's and alphas and betas and everything like this. So release, no specific release date is set. Who'll get to join is undecided, but if you want to test, I will want feedback. Anyone who doesn't will not be part of the next release. So in other words, if you're just somebody who says, I want to help because you want to get the game, and then sit on your fat ass and not actually help once you're playing it, don't even bother. And I certainly hope Goofytroll sticks to that. We need people who know what they're doing when it comes to beta testing and are used to filling out bug reports and give detailed information like, I was playing Sif, I did this ability against this agent, the game crashed, or the enemy mob flew off the screen or something like that. Do not attempt to waste Goofytroll's time, because I will be as upset as Goofy if anybody tries to get into the alpha and beta just to play it and has no desire to report on things. And we're so used to that from AAA devs that are like, here's the alpha you're in, or here's the closed beta you're in. They're not just designed for you to play early. That's called a demo. They're designed for you to help, like in World of Warcraft. When you do a quest in a beta, there's always a button that says feedback on this quest, and you tell them, like, it was complicated, I didn't know where to go, I think it was easy, I killed 82 mobs and only 5 of them dropped gizzards. Do these things not have gizzards in them? That's the kind of stuff that they're looking for. Covert Ops, all will be available, but will need to be unlocked like normal. Hero recruiting gold, CPSP drops, random roulette, hopefully included, may have the agent. I can certainly say I hope we do have the agent. It is what the game was unique about, but then we have to worry about all the gear. And is gear like copyrighted stuff? Something to consider. Some of his hope to do's, multiple saves with the ability to delete some, so you know full well when you're playing a console game like Final Fantasy VII and you have your main save and then you're like, okay, I'm coming up to a point where I have to make a decision, and then you save another save off to the side just in case. That's what we're talking about here, save slots. Different difficulty levels, including a sandbox mode. Sandbox cool, not too sure we really need different difficulty levels other than missions on normal and missions on heroic. PvP may not be in place until the final release, that's fine. We knew PvP was going to take a hit on this, and without it being live and internet connected, PvP would be next to impossible. Drop rates and roulettes will be geared less towards a pay-to-win game. Honestly, my response there is make roulettes 1 out of 9. If there's 9 slots in the roulette, make everything on there a 1 in 9 chance to drop. Now, do not get into what's called gambler's fallacy, where you believe that if it's a 1 in 9 chance to drop and you run the mission 9 times, it's guaranteed to drop once. Don't ever believe that, because every single time the dice rolls in game, it's a 1 in 9 chance. You think you flip a coin and it's 50% chance for heads or tails, and if you roll 3 heads, you're like, oh, the next one has to be tails. No, it doesn't. You can roll heads to infinity and just have bad luck. There will be a collect all from ally option, but you will be guaranteed 1 of each silver ISOs, or energy, and only 1 shot at anything else. Allies will be added as you progress in levels. Energy will have a higher cap and a lower timer. Some discussion points here. First, I'll be changing the name Saviors of the Multiverse is GLB's name. If anyone has an opinion on what it can be, we may vote after we get a short list. Sounds like perhaps like a Twitter straw poll or something would be good for that. He wants to try to separate this from GLB, and rightfully so. This is going to be Goofytroll's own work. He has a right to stamp it. Now, I don't think he's going to do Trolls Universe of Trolls or something like that. I mean, I'm sure it will be something vaguely Marvel related, where we know it's Marvel related, but neither Marvel nor Disney can shit on us for it. Second, I will no longer be posting in the private chat. No group of people deserves to have more input in this than anybody else. If people don't want to take part in a discussion, they can mute the channel. Secrecy is just going to alienate people. So he's saying I want to be very transparent, and I fully agree with that. I think he should be very transparent. He's a dev that has got his roots in the community, and his hands and his brain is in the community. We all have access to him, and he has access to us. So he's saying he wants to keep the communication open, which is great. Third, I want single people or groups of people working on different stories or spec ops. I don't want to limit people to working on a central story, and then there are ideas not being used. Many stories can be comic-sized mods. Someone wants to try their hand at the Spec Ops chapter, go for it. So, again, referencing something that you may have seen in AAA games like Fallout and Skyrim and everything like that, or if you remember things back in Doom and Duke Nukem called TCs, Total Conversions, like you could take the base game of Doom and mod it to being Aliens the movie, and I had that. Like, I actually played the lifter from Aliens way back in Doom in the late 90s, and that was a total conversion. Sometimes total conversions actually go on to be their own games. So he's saying that basically, even if you come up with something that isn't really a community spec ops or season or chapter, it could be a mod that a person loads and plays in their game if the game is actually made in a modular way, similar to Fallout and Skyrim. The idea is that once you get through a certain point, it becomes more a sandbox, and you will be able to access any story that you've loaded. Finally, if you have ideas, voice them and keep this fun. Do not belittle people for their opinions. I don't want people leaving because an overbearing few disagree with them. So he's trying to foster a good community here, and again, that's what we need. This is a fan work for a fan favorite game, and you don't want loud people kind of shitting on ideas. While I do agree with that, I do think people should be very careful, like I've said in past videos. Don't put out 6-year-old ideas for this. Like, it'd be cool if Spider-Man and Superman raced the Flash around the world. Like, that stuff's just idiotic. Like, be adults with this thing. Use your adult brain on this and think of things that are absolutely realistic. And maybe I'm going to differ from Goofytroll on that one, and maybe I'm going to differ from the community when I say, like, it should definitely stick to Marvel. Like, again, I've said this in a few videos, if we get really loose on this, we could potentially wind up being the Mugen of Flash-based, locally installable games over here. I mean, as much as it might be fun to have a Spec Ops that has like a DC crossover or something, it's not really the spirit of the game, and it becomes a different game at that point. And I'm sure there's a market for it. I mean, there became a market for Street Fighter versus Capcom. There became a market for Street Fighter versus Mortal Kombat, and Tekken was Tekken versus Street Fighter, and I think there were like 2 versions. One was based in Street Fighter and the other one was based in Tekken. I mean, yes, there is certainly a market for crossovers and everything like that, but they should be their own games. Like, Heroes of the Storm meshed Overwatch universe and the Diablo universe and the StarCraft universe and the Warcraft universe. So if you ever thought, like, how cool would it be if Arthas and Diablo were on the same team for something, It's not appropriate to do that in Warcraft. It's not appropriate to do it in Diablo, but in Heroes of the Storm, which is a catch-all game, that's great. This game needs to be that. It needs to be the Warcraft universe or the Diablo universe, not the Heroes of the Storm universe. So I encourage that if people want to have ideas and spec ops and chapters and characters, A, be cognizant of what it's like to make a sprite like that. If the sprite doesn't exist in the game and can be recolored and slightly altered to get what you want, you're creating a scenario where work is involved. Think of things logically. Like if you wanted to do a Spider-Verse spec ops or something, and you had different spiders related in there, you brought Karn back, or like Madam Web or something like that, that makes sense. But to have a spec ops where like Jean Grey goes to Murder World and hangs out with Shatterstar, and like it's weird. You're like stretching, and it just kind of doesn't mesh. And plus, you know, the Marvel Universe is giving us a lot of good movies that could be used for spec ops. Saw Black Panther Saturday. Thought it was amazing. It would be very easy to write Shuri into the game, and Shuri has taken up the mantle of Black Panther in the past. You could do a skin for White Gorilla and make him as a lockbox character with a skin of it being his movie character. You know, M'Baku has never really particularly been good, but at least in the movie, he was certainly portrayed as good for part of it. So, I mean, things like that make sense. You have Deadpool 2 coming out, and you could have X-Force characters from there. Like, it'd be potentially easy to redo a Kitty Pryde sprite as Negasonic Teenage Warhead. So, you know, Goofy might be encouraging a really open set of communication here, but I encourage people to use their brain on this and don't think of absolutely ridiculous things. So, you know how back in the day in newspapers they would always print retractions and corrections? Well, I owe Jedekiah a correction over there. In the last video I was like Jedeka or whatever it was that I was thinking of with his name and everything, and so it's Jedekiah. I do apologize over there. This is kind of cool. So this is what I was talking about, like in terms of work. Here, Twisted Gaggy is redoing a sprite for Polaris. You can clearly see the base is Chanty. Like, you know this is Enchantress looking at her, but it's been reworked slightly into something that's almost believable to be Polaris. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, when you need to think of the work involved, it's much easier to take Chanty and like get her close to being Polaris than it is to do something completely not in the game. Like, you could turn Deadpool into Sheriff Deadpool super easy, but if he never existed in the game, that would be way harder. So, and don't forget, as Dia was saying, if you've helped in the project in any way, you'll receive 50 gold code to redeem, which is going to be handy. So that's it, guys. I do apologize if perhaps this was bad news on this one. For some people, it won't even be bad news. It's just going to be news that they expected. They expected this to happen with GLB, in kind of along the vein of this is why we can never have nice things. But hey, some things actually work out in the long run. Some things that have been there for 8 years or more actually work out in the end. I'm living proof of that one. So at least now let's put our faith in Goofytroll, and I don't think this will be misplaced faith in any way, shape, or form. Goofytroll is out here day in and day out. He is very much in the trenches fighting this war with us, whereas GLB was in a command center somewhere that we just never really heard of or talked about or had any conversations with. So Goofy, kudos to you for deciding to work on this in the background while we were thinking maybe GLB would have something to all the fatalists that were like, GLB is never going to surface, this is never going to happen, you probably won. If you were betting with somebody, I'd say it's safe to say you can collect on that. For me, I'm not affected either way. I was kind of right in the middle on this one and was not going to be surprised either way. I was going to allow myself to be happily surprised in May if GLB came up with it, but I'm not at all surprised that he's backed out largely from the project. So that's it, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. I do plan on getting a Marvel Future Fight video out sometime soon to discuss the new characters we have, including fan favorite Emma Frost, who is very good. And if you didn't dump some resources in Adam Warlock because you're like, well, maybe he's only going to be good in timeline battle, it's worth it for Emma. She's like Enchantress, but potentially better. Give her some mind obelisks and she'll impress you. So that's it for me, guys. Take care.